exposing Pakistan's disturbing past, atrocities too evil to comprehend. Short of funding Mujahideen with the Americans, the Pakistani state has been complicit in many a heinous act throughout its short history, but maybe none more disturbing than the 1971 state-sanctioned genocide of its own Bengali citizens. What did the Bengalis do to deserve it, you ask? Well, they won an election. But, as always, there's more to it than that. So let's get into it. The British Empire was the largest in history by landmass. It was a creature that had extended far too much to remember its own roots. So, when it decided to come back home, it left its colonies in rather a tricky position. Exploited, used, and then left to fend for themselves. When the British arrived in India, the region's GDP was 1/3 of the global economy. When they left, it was 2%. Not only that, they left it divided into 3 parts, not 2, 3. West Pakistan, India, and East Pakistan. India, or the emergent modern-day state of India, lay in the middle. To its west and east were 2 parts of one federation. This division was based on the Hindu-Muslim divide, but the Muslim League, which had fought nail and tooth to deliver a Muslim-majority state to its followers, finally had its wish. The British left after the Second World War, but not before drawing state lines for the new states. And like all of their colonies, the British messed up this part in this one too. On the day of independence, a violent and bloody mass migration took place. Hindus from the Pakistani state headed for India. Muslims from the Indian state headed for Pakistan. Discrimination, the seeds of discontent. But the faith-based ideology could not bridge the gaps between West and East Pakistan. Urdu-speaking Western elites thought that the Bengali culture was closer to Hinduism and hence considered their population less than. The emergence of a military that yielded extraordinary power within the country further strained relationships between the elite bubble and the general population. East Pakistan constituted 55% of the country's total population, but they were discriminated against on political, social, and cultural levels. The Bangla-speaking Easterners were blessed with fertile land, favourable to rice cultivation in particular. Their agricultural reliability earned it the nickname the Granary of Pakistan. To the industrial-minded Western elites, this was another avenue for exploitation. Since the West was more inclined to industrialize and invest in infrastructure, they built their capital city from nothing. Upon visiting, the Bengalis would often recount how Islamabad smells like a jute, a common crop in the East. As this discrimination continued on one end, the Eastern population, organized democratically under the banner of the Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujib, the party pushed for increased autonomy in the eastern half. Their demands, however, were not met, as the centre continued to sweep their issues under the proverbial rug. All these problems were exacerbated in 1970 after floods wreaked havoc in East Pakistan. As always, the government's response was less than ideal. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. The elections and fallout. The mistreatment of East Pakistan had gone so far that the political bodies thought of it as a colony, not one half of the country. The grievances quickly turned into separatist demands, and before anyone knew it, things had reached a tipping point. The military president, Yahya Khan, gave his call for democratic elections. The Western-based state apparatus had misjudged the popularity of the Awami League, just as they had misjudged the entire issue. Sheikh Mujib and the AL emerged as victors, having won 167 of 169 seats in the National Assembly. Shocked by the outcome, the military threw its power behind Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's PPP from the West. In 1971, Yahya stopped the AL from operating on a democratic mandate and sidelined them. The AL went on large strikes that brought the entire country to a grinding halt. The military in the West, shocked at this move, decided to solve the problem as they'd always done before, by force. And so begins the genocide. Yahya organised Operation Searchlight, a major military operation to subdue the eastern half. Kill 3 million and the rest would eat out of our hands. The command of the operation was handed over to General Tika Khan, the butcher of Balochistan. Intellectuals, civil leaders and nationalists were hunted down. The military troops entered Dhaka University and gunned down 10 teachers and 100 students. Some of the students dug graves for the other victims before being executed themselves. As Yahya employed forces to suppress the movement in major cities across East Pakistan, things started to get truly bleak. In the face of violence, Sheikh Mujib claimed independence in the name of Bangladesh and was promptly arrested. Situations developed at a breakneck pace. The Bengali populations armed themselves against the aggressors, and battalions of the East Bengal regiments mutinied against the state. However, the guerrilla warfare was uncoordinated, and the Pakistani soldiers controlled most of the major cities. Mass arrests and executions were commonplace. Knowing that the state had cities under complete watch, the resistance leaders, as well as the targeted intellectuals and political leaders, left for the countryside. In the countryside, the resistance groups became more organised and came together under the name Mukti Fauj and later Mukti Bahinj. By May 1971, the Bengali forces recruited up to 100,000 young men and started training to fight against the onslaught. Meanwhile, the Pakistani forces continued their breakdown of religious and ethnic minorities in the city. The main idea was to target young men so that there were fewer able-bodied men to help out in the war. They would round crowds of young, able-bodied men and force them to claim allegiance to the state or else. As the cities dried for fodder, they penetrated into the countryside to take care of the rebels. In the village of Burunga, the soldiers gathered all the men outside a school building, looted their valuables, divided the men into Hindus and Muslims, and shot everyone except the Muslims. While the males were met with violent force, the women were not protected either. As the troops razed village after village, they were let loose on the population, including women. It was systematically embedded in the military mindset that raping the Bengali women was another means of asserting dominance. That, and the obvious misogyny and racism. In 1971, around 200,000 women were victims of sexual violence at the hands of the Pakistani military. The scope widens. As the Pakistani military continued its genocide against the Bengalis, they displaced around 10 million refugees into India, creating a massive humanitarian crisis. The Indians had been providing rebel forces with provisions and intelligence in a war against their old rival. On the strategic front, supporting the formation of a new state would have dealt a massive blow to their regional rival. But at this point, they decided to leave the shadows, publicly throw their support behind Sheikh Mujib's new state, and resolve the issue quickly before the refugee crisis worsened. The Soviet Union supported them on the international stage since Pakistan was a US ally. The Nixon administration wanted good ties with Pakistan, but the reports coming out of Bangladesh showed the extent of physical and sexual violence that the Pakistani military had perpetrated. While initially torn, Indira Gandhi's delegation convinced them to withdraw financial support to Pakistan. Another Indian delegation to the UK did the same as they rallied international support for Bangladesh and against Pakistan. Initially, the Chinese were also standing behind Pakistan, and so were most Islamic countries. But eventually, the Chinese took a similar approach, telling the Pakistani delegate that it would not involve itself in this mess. The Indo-Pakistan War, 1971. India had been making preparations for a war. An engagement seemed all but inevitable. Irked by India's actions on the national stage, Pakistan launched a preemptive strike on Indian territory on December the 3rd, which India treated as a declaration of war. The very next day, the Indian military targeted aerial and naval bases, dealing a severe blow to Pakistani capabilities. They also moved across the border into Bangladesh, linking up with the freedom fighters to force the genocidal aggressors back. The tenacity and swiftness of the response were commendable, and the Pakistani troops retreated in a state of shock. Unable to comprehend how the war was unfolding, they took their frustration out on civilians. In the final days of the war, they massacred thousands of civilians, especially launching operations to execute intellectuals. Since it had dawned on them that Bangladesh would gain independence, they wanted to cripple the new state. Racist and full of malice, they executed as many people as possible on the 12th, the 13th and the 14th of December. Within 2 weeks of Indian involvement, the Indian and Bengali forces had knocked the Pakistani Air Force out of commission, stopped the naval advances into Bangladesh, retaken several villages, and reached the outskirts of Dhaka. On December the 16th, 1971, they had taken Dhaka back. The next day, a ceasefire was reached as the Pakistani military laid down its arms. Over the next few days, reports continued to shock the world. Women were tied inside Pakistani camps and abused for months. As the months passed and more mass graves were discovered, the death toll was estimated at more than 3 million. Around 40 million people were displaced. The legacy. There is still some debate among historians on whether the Pakistani military's actions amount to genocide. Most believe it is. Targeting leaders of ethnic minorities, the extermination of the Bengali male population, and abuse of Bengali female population all fit the bill of genocide. Add to that the systemic discrimination against the Bengali population that led to the conflict, and it is hard to deny it. The ethnic strand in Bangladesh was tainted, and ethnic mob violence remained a theme for years to come. The lack of civil leaders and intelligentsia made it difficult for the country to initially function in trying times. The US support for Pakistan meant that there was little to no accountability for the state on the international level. To this day, Pakistan denies any wrongdoing and blames its actions on the wrongdoing of the rebels. With more than 3 million casualties in a span of 9 months, it remains one of the most intense genocides in modern history. If you learned something new, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. What do you think about the 1971 genocide? Let us know in the comments. That's it for now, and we'll see you in the next video.